Pierre Berton de Marigny was born July 12, 1920, and he died November 30th, 2004. He was born in Whitehorse, Yukon, and he died in Toronto. Writer, journalist, broadcaster.
It was Sergio Leone, the Italian director, who made him a star, as you remember, with several spaghetti westerns. But when I interviewed Eastwood, he was moving into direction, behind the cameras. He'd already directed 2 films, and of course I was interested in talking to him about his Italian period. So I asked him about that, remarking that he must look back on that time with a certain strangeness.
Well, I don't know about strangeness, but I think back on a very lucky time in my life, a very decisive time. If I hadn't made the decision to take the chance and go to Spain and do an Italian, it was actually an Italian-German Spanish co-production of a Japanese samurai story, I may not have had some of the opportunities I've had in the last few years.
Certainly was a turning point in your life. How tough a decision was that? Was it a difficult decision? You were working in Rawhide at the time on TV, weren't you?
Yeah, I was working in Rawhide, and my agent asked me if I'd read this story, and I said I wasn't terribly interested because I'd been doing a Western year in, year out for the prior 6 years. And I finally said, well, I'll read it anyway. I'm curious to see what they've done with it. Because I had seen the picture Yojimbo, which Fistful of Dollars was taken from. And I read it and I was fascinated by it. I thought it was great. I thought it was one of those things that would be a very risky project. It could either go over very well or not go over at all, and hopefully go over well.
I'm told that you had quite a lot to do with developing the character away from the character in the script, such as taking out a lot of the lines that they'd written. Things like that.
Well, I tried to trim it down because I felt the secret to that character was an economy of dialogue, because once you get into expounding great pages of talk, you dissipate the strength of the character. The strength is in the mystique and its the imagination of the audience into what you're thinking and what you're doing. And the more you talk, the more you take away their ability to imagine along with you what the thought processes of that particular character are.
Yeah, part of the secret was not really knowing where he came from.
The war scenes in his books reminded me of Tolstoy, a real-time experience with high drama and high tension. As he got older, he became very humorous, and he did actually win a humorous prize for his sensibilities and his ability to laugh at himself. He worked in Korea as a war correspondent, and he really did not like to be censored. He often remarked that the censorship was very heavy during the Korean War, and he did not like that very much. He fought out against censorship. His books about the railway going across Canada and the War of 1812, and especially for me, Vimy, really hit a nerve deep inside and made me love Canadian history. And what do you know? On top of his skills as a writer and a journalist,
and it is getting higher and higher and going toward that standard, that what I would term quality. I do not believe that there is such thing as like Chinese way of fighting or the Japanese way of fighting or whatever way of fighting, because unless human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs, we will have a different form of fighting. But basically we have only 2 hands and 2 feet. So styles tends to not only separate man, because they have their own doctrines, and then the doctrine became the gospel truth, that you cannot change, Me, okay, to me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony thing, you see what I mean? Blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, not that, my friend, is very hard to do. In the United States, I think something about the Oriental, the true Oriental should be shown.
Hollywood sure as heck hasn't.
You better believe it, man. I mean, it's always that pigtail and bouncing around, chop, you know, with the eyes slant and all that.
Let me ask you, however, about the problems that you face as a Chinese hero in an American series. Have people come up in the industry and said, well, we don't know how the audience are going to take a non-American?
Well, such question has been raised. In fact, it is being discussed, and that is why The Warrior is not going to be on.
I see.
You see, because unfortunately, such thing does exist in this world, you see, like, I don't know, certain part of the country, right? Where, like, they think that business-wise, it's a risk. And I don't blame them, I mean, in the same way, it's like in Hong Kong, if a foreigner come and became a star, if I were the man with the money, I probably would have my own worry of whether or not the acceptance would be there. But that's all right, because if you honestly express yourself, it doesn't matter. I hope that the picture I am in would either explain why the violence was done, whether right or wrong or whatnot. But unfortunately, pictures, most of them here, are done mainly just for the sake of violence. You know what I mean? Like, you know, fighting for 30 minutes, get stabbed 50 times.
Well, I'm fascinated. Let me give you your microphone back. I'm fascinated that you came back.
I am a martial artist.
There were some lines that expressed your philosophy. I don't know if you remember them or not.
I remember that. I said, this is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now, you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Best-selling author.
And here is Pierre,
broadcaster,
just being iconic.
Winner of the 1959 Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor, Companion of the Order of Canada, and marijuana connoisseur, Mr. Pierre Berton.
Hi, I'm Pierre Berton. Looking back on my career, you know, I cannot count the number of times a young man or a young woman has come up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Berton, what's the best way to roll a joint?" Well, let me tell you, it's not that way. Come on, put that down and we'll start over. First of all, you need a good rolling surface. May I suggest either the National Dream or my latest book, Prisoners of the North. Avoiding novelty or colored paper, I prefer white paper to add to your mix, and being in Ontario, we always use hydroponic. So be sure to remove any twigs and seeds. Now, the way you distribute the mix will determine the shape of your joint. I prefer the classic cone-shaped joint, what the young people call a coner. Now for the tricky bit. Pick everything up, start in the middle, roll outwards, and let your thumbs do most of the work. And when you have an even consistency, wrap the excess paper around the joint, wet the paper, and seal the joint. Excellent. Firm, but not too firm. Just the way I like it. And remember, Canada, it's the loose joints that tend to fall apart, leaving unsightly toke burns on your chairs or on your bow tie. It's a tragedy we all want to avoid, don't we? I'm Pierre Berton, and that's how to roll a joint.